So I know a while back I did a beginner to intermediate Marisa guide, kind of detailing a bunch of just more basic things about the character, like combos, Oki. Once you have that, what do you do? You know, you have combos, you know that what the moves do, how do you piece them all together? So that's kind of what I want to detail here. Yes, hello YouTube. So let's start off. What's like a game plan that you want to have with the character moving in? If you watch Marisa players, the game plan seems to be to fucking ram your head against a brick wall constantly until something happens. You know, just and then people are shocked when Marisa has one of the lowest average MRs from all the cast. This character, she might be easy to pick up because I think she has a very low skill floor. She's very easy to just pick up and play and just start doing shit. But once you start playing against people that know what's up, then it gets infinitely harder, right? So what's a game plan that we want to develop with her? How do we build consistency with a character that has, like, inherently she's very slow, right? Very slow walk speed, slow pokes. She has some of the most whiff punishable buttons in the game. Bad defense. Like, how do we do this thing? How do we start playing some neutral with her? What do we do? And really, if we simplify her gameplay, it all revolves around Gladius. This move is one that you really want to become familiar with. I mean, if you play Marisa, you're already fucking doing it, but I want you to become familiar with it in a different way. Not only what range, what range is Gladius hitting? And when Gladius in neutral, I'm usually referring to Light Punch Gladius because it has the shortest recovery, or at least the fastest startup. And the hurt box that it leaves out is a bit smaller than her other ones, aka it's harder to whiff punish. So Gladius by itself, it demands respect, right? Your opponents can't just fucking play in this range and, click buttons without repercussion. Like, they're getting punched in the face. Understanding that, we have to take it a step further and ask ourselves, how is your opponent playing around Gladius? What are they doing to beat Gladius? How are they dealing with it? And you'll come to find out that the answers are fairly linear across the board. Essentially, there's just a few ways that you can deal with it, right? Either they aggress into Gladius with lows, right? Like this range, they'll walk up and they'll clip you low. It's effective because Gladius doesn't have lower body armor. Not even OD Gladius, so it loses to lows. They can do that. They could time jumps, and timing jumps against Marisa is usually pretty good because her anti-airs are slow. So you could get a lucky timing and land a full jump in against her. Or the most common one is just walking out of range and whiff punishing it. So how do we deal with these? Options? Let's break them down one by one. So let's say your opponent they want to deal with Gladius by moving forward and clipping low. That entails that they are, first of all, they are potentially just getting punched, right? Because they have to time it perfectly or else they're just getting punched as they're moving forward. It also means that they're walking into this range right here. So this is where Gladius is kind of the centerpiece of your entire toolkit, is how well your other tools complement each other. So when people are walking forward into this range, that makes them very susceptible to like random crouching medium punch drive rushes, right? And Marisa gets a lot of damage from these pokes. They're susceptible to this, they're susceptible to pokes, or even just, again, eating a stray Gladius. So walking forward into button range might seem scary, but if you have an answer to it, I mean, you could potentially win the round off that. And obviously, if your opponent is just trying to time jumps, I mean, it's easy to say just anti-air, right? But it truly does become that. Again, if you see your opponent is the way they're playing around Gladius, if you see that they're just kind of being antsy, you don't really need to do much. You can just kind of chill back here. You're not really committing to much. See them jump, boom, anti-air. Now, the most common option is your opponent's gonna walk back and try to whiff punish it. This at higher level, this is really how you deal with Gladius. You'll see this across the board, man. Like, even I play against Marisa like this. Like, I'll try to, you know, center my game plan around with punishing Gladius. But that's exploitable. That isn't a foolproof plan. You know, the deeper we go down the rabbit hole for Street Fighter, the more we understand that there's a counter to everything. Everything has a counter. Every game plan has a counter. So let's figure out what's a counter to this. If your opponent is just walking out of range for your Gladius, fishing for a whiff punish, it's very easy to tell when that's the case, right? You know your opponent is looking for Gladius if they're playing from this range and they're not really committing in neutral. You don't have to whiff Gladius and have them whiff punish you for you to find out. It's very obvious. You just have to look out for it. Now, if you see your opponent playing back here, that means that they're not willing to commit into this space because they want you to whiff so they can punish. So that means that this range right here, all this space, all this real estate is free. We can just walk and take it. Now, once we walk up and take this real estate, then what? This is where Marisa can really punish your opponent for inactivity. Like, you can really punish your opponent for just playing reactive and trying to play around Gladius. What I like to do, I'll walk forward, I'll clip low, you know, crouching medium kick to try to keep him from walk forward into forward hard kick. Now this option right here is very punishing because even on block, look at Luke's drive meter. He loses a full bar, man. All because they're playing back here and they allowed you to walk forward into this range. What does this do? What does this action do? You know, you're forcing something out of your opponent. They want to play passive. We're punishing him for that. What's going to be the counter? Well, obviously, they're not going to let you just walk in for free. They're going to start pressing, right? And this is where you can set up your whip punishes with this character. You're threatening with this button, you know, as you encroach, as you gather this space, your Gladius is also live. Because it's very unlikely that your opponent just keeps trying to force a certain spacing to whiff punish Gladius. It's very unlikely, because if that's all they're doing, if they're just backing up, again, they're getting harassed. So Gladius is active again. This is live. So there's several options, right? Understand your options, understand your opponent's options, and what your counters are to them. As a prefix, Marisa is a character that is heavily rewarded from punishing opponents' mistakes, right? If we break her playstyle down in a nutshell, she's a character that punishes mistakes heavily. Your objective is to force those mistakes. What can we consider mistakes? Jumping when you're ready for the anti-air, that can be considered a mistake. Whiffing a button in front of her is 100% a mistake, right? If you're able to force these whiffs, you can get paid. Like, you could potentially end the round right there. Her whiff punish damage is some of the highest in the game. So forcing out these whiffs, forcing out these jumps, how do we do it? That's kind of what we're detailing, right? Like, being able to take control of this space, being able to harass. Your opponent is more likely to press buttons if you are harassing them in this space, if you're taking advantage of their inactivity. You want them to play more active, right? Because that means that they're opening themselves up to getting punched. They're opening themselves up to getting whip punished. And with Marisa, you don't need to win a lot of interactions in neutral. You only need to win like 2, and that's it. If you win 1 interaction neutral, aka you get a whiff punish, bro, if you have level 3, pretty much guess for game. Like, if your opponent wakes up with a reversal, so let's say, hypothetical situation here, right? Let's say that's from a whiff punish and a blocked reversal, right? You don't need that many interactions with this character. So we want to set those things up. That's key with Marisa, setting them up. So with that in mind, again, this is centralized around Gladius. How does your opponent deal with Gladius? What are their options? How are they trying to avoid this button? If all they're doing is walking back, how are they stopping you from just walking up and harassing constantly? They have to have a response or else they burn out. Now, obviously, there's way more variables in a Street Fighter game, right? They're not just sitting there playing this fucking respectful game of Fusies. Fuck no, there's chaos. There's chaos, they're jumping, they're drive rushing, there's a lot of things happening. So the onus is on you to kind of slow down the game so that you could be the one to aggress. You want to create these pockets of time that allow you to either sneak a forward hard kick or a drive rush. The Superman Punch is really good for this. The Superman Punch punishes your opponent being hyperactive here. If they're just kind of going ham, especially like with lows, if they're just kind of harassing with walk-up lows, which walk-up lows can be dangerous for Marisa to face because you can't really force them to whiff all the time because Marisa's walk speed is so slow. If they walk forward and you walk back, they're going to catch up to you and you're going to get clipped low. So understanding that, understanding what range that's likely to happen in, and either committing to blocking the low, letting them burn their bar for you to drive reversal, or just kind of disengaging, just giving up that space. And then threatening with Superman Punch from this range. What Superman Punch does for Marisa, you're not doing it for damage, right? You're not doing it to really clip them. I mean, if you do end up clipping your opponent with Superman Punch, that's awesome. Good for you. You got paid. You got insane damage and corner carry. You know, that's great. But in reality, it's not going to hit a lot of times. What you want them to do is really acknowledge this move and shift their focus towards it, because it is something they have to answer. They're not just gonna let you, you know, hop up constantly all over the air. Like, again, their drive meter is in danger. So your opponents are faced with a scenario right here, right? Where in order to stop Superman Punch, that means they have to look for Superman Punch. If they look for Superman Punch, then obviously it's a lot easier to counter. You know, they can anti-air. A lot of people like to neutral jump in this range, or maybe jab it out of the air. Like, there's answers to Superman Punch, but it requires focus from your opponent. And if we're able to establish that level of focus on their end, that opens up other options, right? Like, I know I've been throwing this out here and I know that my opponent's looking for it. So what does that mean? That means that I'm allowed to, again, take up space either with forward hard kick or drive rush. Like, these scenarios really do open up drive rush, because drive rush is at its strongest when your opponent isn't looking for it. If your opponent's looking for it, then obviously drive rush becomes easier to check. But if they're not looking for it, it's impossible. You're not going to check drive rush if you're not focused on checking drive rush. So you want them to, you want to steer their attention to your other tools so you can aggress with a different one, if that makes sense. And we could flip it around. Let's say your opponent is, you know, you've been threatening them with drive rush. They're really focused on stopping drive rush. That means that they are solely concentrated on stopping you when you turn green. That opens up other options. Again, Superman Punch, even jumps in that case, honestly. Like, I think if you establish enough Superman Punch pressure, Marisa's jumps are very strong because the startup kind of looks the same as a Superman Punch. It's hard to differentiate if you're, you know, if you're not really looking for it, if you're looking for something else, if you're focused on, like, holy shit, I need to whip punish Gladius, I need to stop drive rush. If you're focused on something else, it's very difficult to tell the difference. So you can just sneak in a few of these. But all in all, if all this is making sense, if we're adding these things up, we're realizing it's kind of a game of deception and being able to kind of force your opponent's attention and focus towards some of her tools in order to strengthen her other tools, right? I know you're looking to whiff punish Gladius, so I'm not going to give it to you. I'm going to encroach. I'm going to take space. I know that you don't want me to walk up and pressure, so as soon as I initiate my walk up, you're going to press a button. Boom, baited, whip punish, 30% plus corner. I know you're looking for Superman Punch, so I'm going to get away with this. So it's these constant reads on your opponent that are necessary. But again, you don't need to be correct a lot of times. It only requires a few, but you just have to be aware. Now, that's overall her neutral game plan. So what Like, what if, you know, we land the hit, and well, what do we do now? So overall, if you're landing a hit, you get your whiff punish, you get your button, you start your combo. Your decision on what to do with that combo, it's all based on where you are on the screen and resources. So let's say you get your hit somewhere mid-screen. Your focus should be just to carry your opponent to the corner. How you do that depends on how much drive meter you have. If you have a lot of drive bar, you want to usually spend some of it. But if you're kind of starved from drive rush or drive meter, you want to go for routes that aren't going to be very expensive. You know, to give you an example, let's say you have full bars and you land the combo, right? You're free to just start spending meter for Oki, like that scenario. But let's say you don't have that much drive. Let's say you're about here, right? You're not going to spend another bar and put yourself at risk of burnout just to get corner when you have other options. You know, something as like Sparta Kick, for example, accomplishes the same thing. Obviously, it doesn't put you in command throw range, but at least it gives you corner positioning. Now, when I went over that, you might have noticed that I was talking about how your options are going to vary depending on your drive gauge. Like, if you're going to take anything away from this, I want you to realize and pay close attention to how important drive meter is. Not just for Marisa, but I think in Street Fighter 6 in general. At a high level, your meter management is tested, and if you have poor meter management, you put yourself in a lot of like RNG situations, and you're just going to be inconsistent, right? Because you're just going to lose to random shit. You're going to lose to Street Fighter 6, essentially. You're gonna get burnt out really often. You're gonna get put in like checkmate situations in the corner very often, or you're being abused because your drive meter's low. Like there's a lot of positions that you put yourself in that just suck if you have low drive meter. Although Marisa can function in burnout, you still don't want to burn out with this character because her options when she has drive meter are very powerful. So rule of thumb, you want to keep your drive bar healthy. Usually I like to keep at around like a bit over 3 bars. Like that's as low as I'm willing to go, because this ensures that if my opponent, let's say they whiff a button and I go, you know, get my combo, you know, what have you, I can convert into her more damaging combos, right? I could end the round from there essentially, or I could go for a mix on block with her forward hard kick, drive push. So her meter is very valuable. Don't be reckless with it. Really keep in mind where your bar is and where your opponent's bar is. So the only times I'll actually go a bit ham with my drive meter is if my opponent has low drive gauge. If my opponent has low drive gauge, that's when I'm willing to spend more of it, right? If I see that they're also low, that means that I can pressure them. I can put them in a position where they're in risk of burning out. And since I'm the one applying pressure, I'm the one pressing buttons essentially, my drive gauge is going to recover before theirs do. So I put myself in a position where, you know, I'm going to force the burnout. And if that is going to require some drive gauge to do so, then so be it. It's fully worth it. Because if you force a burnout, especially with Marisa, I mean, you could really abuse. She has some very strong corner pressure on burnout. And obviously, like, if you end up getting the dizzy, she has probably the highest damage combos from that corner dizzy. That's what you want to do. You want to force that situation. Now, that brings me to another point. Usage of forward hard kick. Forward hard kick, the more I use it, the more I realize how absolutely powerful it is. Not just the fact that it deletes a drive gauge, but when you have drive meter, this thing becomes a fucking nuke. It forces drive reversals. You have to drive reversal this because on block, you get some of the easiest pressure. Like for example, forward hard kick, drive rush into command throw, it's auto-timed to beat 4-frame buttons. You can't jab her out of that. And it doesn't require manual timing, you just go for it. And on block, you know, you could also force like a crouching medium punch or a stand medium kick, where if they try to jump out, you get a full combo. And obviously, if the knee hits, you also get a full combo, and she does ridiculous damage. Learn how to use this button, learn the spacing for it, learn the times when you can sneak it in, because it is a 14 frame move, so it's really slow. But Marisa has great tools in facilitating it and stopping your opponent from pressing buttons. So if you're able to accomplish that, this is your reward. Being able to threaten with this button. Learn it, abuse it, take your free dubs from it. I feel like I see you fishing for counter hit in 3 ranges, crouching light punch. Great. Yeah, I mean, for Marisa, like, you're fishing for, again, like buttons, whiffs from this range, right? If you're playing a character that delivers nukes, if your opponent makes a mistake, you want to force them out, you want to really look for them. This is where, like, it's going to require some foozies, some neutral from the Marisa players, which is wild, right? I know you didn't pick up this character to play some fucking neutral. I know you picked up this character because you just want to go full gorilla. I mean, yeah, you can, but you know, you're gonna, I don't know how much fun you're gonna have trying to get out of the 1200 MR fucking, you know, shithole you put yourself in. Like, in order to play her at a higher level, you do need competent neutral. Absolutely practice that. Thankfully, there is a YouTube video I brought out for how to train your foozies in training mode. Make sure to watch that. Apply some of those drills. Practice them. Those drills do include scenarios where you're able to, you know, whiff punish, anti-air, react to drive rush, basically the things that you're gonna encounter regardless. So if you get better at these drills, it will directly translate to better in-game. But hope that made sense. I know it's not, I haven't really touched on a lot of different situations or features, but I feel like a more general guide on how to play her at a higher level would be a good way to start. Now, any questions so far? Include me in the thumbnail. Do you think you could break down one of your matches that showcase certain aspects you were talking about? Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, I guess it would make sense, right? The last ranked match is a good example. Fuck, I was like falling asleep during crit. This shit happened at like almost 3 AM last night. I don't know if this is gonna be a good example. Maybe we can see. Yeah, Tostada presses I through. Starting off, Chris, who's obviously very solid in neutral. You know, right here, he is respecting Gladius, right? So this is where the minigame starts. Like walking forward, seeing what the reaction is. Is there a button involved? If a button is pressed here, it's whiff punished, right? So, but that didn't happen. I could, there's several options I have. I could commit to a Superman punch. I could commit to like walk up forward heavy kick, walk up crouching medium kick. You know, there's a lot of options, but there's no need this early on. You could kind of, you know, get a better feel for your opponent, and then jump happened when there was nothing, right? And the thing about Marisa is if you get an anti-air, you get a mix after that. You got a guess. You get Oki. So taking advantage of it. No, back in neutral. Clip with low forward. So this, it might not seem like the principles of what I just talked about, like, you know, playing around the fact that your opponent is focusing down Gladius. It might not seem like it, but look at just the existence of Gladius. The range your opponent has to play at, right? Now, I did go for Gladius there. I thought it was safe, but it wasn't. Boomer inputs. But as you see, just the existence of Gladius forces the opponent to play from a further range. Now, what's happening here is now the opponent recognizes that they were just kind of getting walked down because they were trying to whiff punish Gladius. So they start aggressing in this range. So this is what I mean where Gladius becomes live again. Like as soon as your opponent stops respecting Gladius, that's when Gladius is live. So any Gladius right here during these interactions would have worked. Like boom, that loses to Gladius. That loses to Gladius. So that would have worked. Now Chris overextended here. And yeah, pressuring with forward hard kick, right? Because that shit is just good regardless. Block, hit, it doesn't matter. Like, it's just in your favor all around. Now right here, I see that he has low drive gauge, so what do? I start aggressing. I will spend my own bar in order to make sure that he deletes his. Because I know in that scenario, I'm heavily favored. So I'll spend it. I'll spend it. Oh, no, that's just GG, right? I don't know if this was the best example. I would have had to prepare one, but we can see it in full display, right? We can see it in full display, what it looks like to take advantage of your opponent's trying to counter Gladius. So same concept, right? Great perfect pair on his end on Superman Punch. What does that tell me? That tells me that he's looking for Superman Punch. So I'm abusing it more because I really wanted to focus on that Superman Punch. That right there, okay, this whiff button, this could have been it. That's a missed opportunity on my end, but as you see, it's exactly what we talked about. It's kind of part of the plan, right? And same concept. Because we were threatening with walk forward heavy kick, I start my walk forward and then I stop. And what does that do? That triggers a response from your opponent. Button. Because otherwise, I get a free forward hard kick, right? Boom, delete another bar, or I spend 3 bars to force a guess. But understanding that your opponent understands that, you're able to force whiffs. And then just more, yeah, just again, more harassment on the drive meter. I have a lot of bars, so why not? Now, Chris has shown that he's really good at perfect parrying those Superman punches. So what do I do with that info? I actually have no idea. Again, he's not respecting Gladius, so that's when Gladius is active, right? Got an anti-air, that means we got a free guess, and it ultimately comes down to, are you gonna guess correctly? So now we know, again, this mini game is constant, right? We know that the opponent is going to respect the walk up because there's a risk in pressing a button, right? This is where you need good fundamentals, you need good footsies in order to make this work. Again, and this is something that you could absolutely work on. It's even if you feel like you suck at neutral, you suck at it because you haven't actually tried improving it. Like, you actually you have to invest time into it. It doesn't just happen. I'm saying advanced guide for a reason, because this is, if you want to play the game at a higher level, it's going to require a higher level of commitment. This isn't, oh, try these 3 tips for easy wins. None of this shit's easy. You have to put in the time. If you're not willing to put in the time, I don't know, man. Play another fucking game. What can I say? So, again, because we established the whiff punish, we're able to walk forward, right? Because we established that, we're able to walk forward, right? This same range that normally would be contested with a button, this same situation happened. There was a whiff punish, but because the opponent's smart, they're not just going to do the same shit. And we understand that. We can walk forward, take up this space, and harass with that, right? Boomer. And this is just Street Fighter 6 shit happening, right? You're getting clipped. Have to guess, sucks to suck. So he's been very good at dealing with Superman Punch. But it's an option that you have to keep representing to discourage other options, right? To discourage like crouching medium kicks. And here it's just Marisa shit. Yeah, I mean, it's just Marisa. You see, you don't need that many hits. You don't need that many interactions. Just a few. Just a few. Force the guess on your opponent, but you have to win those interactions. And in order to win those interactions, you have to know how. What are the options? What are the opponent's options? What are your options? So I hope that made sense. I know those weren't the best example videos, but I hope that kind of at least highlights a few areas where you'd want to work on.